the fire of your love. Amen. I was rereading a book this past week on spiritual direction, and this statement caught my attention. Isn't it funny how you go back and you reread a book and you see something totally different that you didn't see before? And this statement, our deepest desire is to be seen, to be known, and to be accepted. So this morning I'd like to talk a little bit about being seen and being known, because we hear those two things in our gospel this morning. Being seen and being known. But before we do that, let's take a satellite view of our church seasons. So in Advent, we wait and we hope, hoping that this year Jesus will be born again in our hearts, that something is going to happen that will renew our connection to God. And then we get to Christmas, and the awe of Christmas unfolds, and whether you are 7 or 70, we are swept into that holy mystery of incarnation. Epiphany arrives, and God turns up the volume on who Jesus is and how we might respond. Now, we all know that the word epiphany means to manifest or to reveal. And the innuendo of the word is that this manifestation comes as a surprise. Now, I don't know what your knee-jerk response is to surprises. I can think about when my girls would ask if they could go do something, like when Megan, as a senior in high school, said, "Mom, I would like to drive down to Waco for Dia del Oso by myself." The knee-jerk was, no. So I don't know what your knee-jerk is. You know, some surprises actually delight us. Some frighten us. Some give us pause, give me pause. And then I need to do the Mary thing, which is, I need to just ponder this in my heart. Well, in Epiphany, we are invited to respond to surprises. Herod is surprised by the Magi. His response is fear, suspicion, and evil machinations. The Magi are surprised by their dream that Herod is actually an evil ruler. And so they decide to believe that, and they go home another way. John, and maybe Jesus, is surprised by the voice of God at the baptism. I sometimes wonder if they both went, oh my gosh, maybe this baptism by the Spirit is a real thing. But what does Jesus do? He's driven to the wilderness to think and pray. This Sunday, it's Nathanael's turn to be surprised. Jesus calls him an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. How did Jesus know that? How? And notice that that is not the question that Nathanael asks. He says, "Where did you see me?" And that, to me, that just seems like a very bizarre question. So follow me on this rabbit trail, if you would, please, because I realize this feels like a rabbit trail. How do we know people? How do you know them? So I thought about that. It's like, well, sometimes I see them, and so I am observing them, and I know that. Or I talk to them, and I get to know them. Or I read about them, and I get to know them. Now, Jesus probably didn't have social media, couldn't stalk Nathaniel, know about him that way. So don't you wonder, how did Jesus know Nathaniel? Maybe there was a little word of mouth going on. But he probably didn't outright see him and know him. But that was the way people got to know each other back in Jesus' time. Think about Jesus, right? Word of mouth. Lots of word of mouth going on. People go, oh my gosh, what is all this hubbub? I think I better go see. Better go check this guy out. That's how it worked. So, I don't know, maybe the question, where did you see me, makes a little more sense when we think about how people got to know each other back then. But the answer that Jesus gives is totally bizarre. Jesus says, oh, I saw you under the fig tree. Well, here's what I have read into this for years and years and years and years. Oh, Jesus saw him under the fig tree. And he also probably knew, he made that comment about nothing good comes out of Nazareth yet, but because Jesus is God and God is omniscient and knows everything and sees everything, and he loves him anyway. You know, none of that is in there. I just totally made all that up in my head. But hang on. This rabbit trail goes a bit further. And what we find is the prophet Micah. When Micah opens chapter 4, he says, in the last days, that would be the days of the Messiah. And verse 4 says, everyone will sit under their own fig tree. I think Jesus just cryptically said to Nathaniel, these are the days of the Messiah. And I see you as a person who is looking, who is yearning for the Messiah. So did Nathaniel really sit under a fig tree having lunch on his break from fishing, and Jesus saw him there? I don't know. Or did Jesus miraculously know Nathaniel in an even deeper sense? Know him like Psalm 139 knowing. You know, we just said it, didn't we? You have searched me out and known me. You know my thoughts from afar. What kind of Jesus do you want? Do you want a Jesus that sees your every move and knows everything about you? Do you want a Jesus that knows the deepest desire of your heart? Knows and somehow sees the very best in us, the very best of our deepest desire in our heart, and says to us, there is no deceit there. I see it. I know it. I love it. It is no wonder, when I go back and look at this, that Nathaniel says, you are the Son of God. He has been touched by that deep knowing. So this rabbit trail, I live on a farm. I don't live on a farm. I have a farm. I've followed rabbit trails. They go a lot of places, but they eventually come back. We're coming back. What do we know about ourselves? We want to be seen. We want to be known. What do we know about this season of Epiphany? It involves surprise manifestations. So Epiphany is also a time when we are asked again and again, what is our response to the surprise? So there seems to be a lot of speculation and pondering going on, like we heard earlier in the gospel. You know, they're talking. It's like, ooh, I think I found the favorite one. I think I found the Messiah. I think I found the one that the prophets are talking about. Lots and lots of talk. Lots of curiosity. Lots of hope. And that is a response. Cautious hope. And that's going to drive some to investigate further, to accept the invitation to come and see. And maybe they're coming to see just out of curiosity, not knowing where that's going to lead. So what about our friend Nathaniel? He disappears. He just disappears from the radar screen altogether until the very end of the Gospel of John. And he shows up for breakfast on the beach with his friends, the fishermen, and he's welcomed. Let's have fish, bread, conversation. So we don't know really what Nathaniel did with this revelation, this surprise epiphany. You know, he's not listed as one of the 12 disciples. But we know that Jesus had a lot of disciples that were not named and listed, that were not on the list. I don't know. My imagination has decided, which means you can take it or leave it, right? That Nathaniel keeps the income flowing for the disciples and their families because he's part of the fishing crew. So he just keeps working. And that doesn't make him less of a disciple. It just takes him out of the limelight. So Nathaniel isn't on the list, but he still shows up at the charcoal fire, which means he knows what's been going on because he knew when to show up, right? And we too are unnamed disciples. So what is our response going to be to surprise epiphanies? What is our response to the invitation to come and see? I hope you are captured by holy curiosity. You don't have to make a commitment with curiosity. Just have it and let it lead. See where it goes. Maybe you're going to be willing to step into something new, something surprising. And maybe, just maybe, it will be the answer to your heart's deepest desire. Amen.